So it doesn't happen when you turn 50 and you stop having periods. Most women have low progesterone for many, many years before that. And some women will have low progesterone even in their teens. I mean, their ovaries just don't get it together to produce progesterone. Ovaries do a better job of producing estrogen, not always, but generally, a better job of producing estrogen, and not quite as good a job of producing progesterone. And if you compromise ovarian function at all, okay, like get a tubal ligation and cut off one of the arteries that goes to your ovaries, you're going to go through menopause fashion. And your ovaries will still produce estrogen for the most part, but they will not produce as much progesterone on a timely basis. So many women, if they have a tubal, how many women have tubals? Lots of women have tubals. And I'm not saying that you can't have a tubal, but the answer afterwards is not to take birth control pills. And I can't tell you how many people I've seen who have been put on birth control pills because their periods went haywire after they had a tubal ligation. And really all they need is natural progesterone in a high enough dose. But PMS symptoms, everybody know what the PMS symptoms are? Want me to list them? List them. I may miss some. And I'll list them in just a second. But PMS symptoms, eclampsia, preeclampsia, so getting high blood pressure and fluid retention, towards the end of pregnancy. That's a progesterone deficiency. So if you don't have enough progesterone during pregnancy, first off, you won't get pregnant. You have to have plenty of progesterone when that fertilized egg, you ovulate, eggs floating and released from the ovary, it's coming down the tube, and the sperm are coming up this way, and they connect. And all of a sudden there's a new creature. There's a new life. There's a new soul in this world. And that's not all you need. Boys are important, but that's not all you need to get really pregnant. You're not pregnant until the fertilized egg implants in the uterus. Okay? And then you need that uterus to support that little egg right there until that egg grows a placenta. And that takes weeks. So you need lots and lots of progesterone, because progesterone is what helps that placenta ripen up and be ready for a fertilized egg. Does that make sense? All right, so many women will have luteal phase defect. And what that means is you're not producing enough progesterone. So that's one of the most common causes of women who have infertility problems. So you have to have enough progesterone in order to, for the egg to implant. You have to have enough progesterone, and that progesterone is produced right after ovulation. If you do not have enough progesterone during that period of time, then you get premenstrual syndrome, or the more serious version of it, which is called premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. And that's when women kill each other, or kill their kids, or kill their husbands. And so many violent crimes by women, because women, for the most part, we're not real violent. Okay? I mean, we do more kumbaya stuff and come together and, let's, love on each other, et cetera, et cetera. That's what estrogen and progesterone do. That's what they do for us. How many of y'all have been pregnant? We know she has been. Okay. Do you remember the energy that you had and your ability to get things done? You were decisive. You didn't have any, you could juggle everything. And you just did a great job. That's because you had lots of progesterone. That's what it does for you. Okay, during your pregnancy. Progesterone, in addition to helping your uterus down here, progesterone also raises GABA, which is a calming neurotransmitter in your brain. And if you do not have enough progesterone, then you are going to be a nervous twit. You will not be able to focus on things. You may have some ADD symptoms. You will be a worrier. You will see the glass half empty. Something bad is going to happen, you can't deal with it. You are just going to really want Xanax or Valium or alcohol or something like that. And those drugs will work for you. So don't get mad at someone if they're craving those kinds of things to feel normal. They may need some progesterone. I just saw a woman tonight who is postmenopausal and was not on progesterone. And what did they give her? They gave her diazepam, they gave her Valium, and it works. Because progesterone does the same things as Valium in the brain. It calms the brain down. it raises your GABA, your gamma-aminobutyric acid, right? So it's not just a sex hormone for your uterus. Okay, so let me back up just a little bit. So progesterone works on the brain. Progesterone works on your breasts. Progesterone works on every single cell in your body. Other symptoms of PMS, which is what younger women experience when they don't have enough progesterone and you're still making plenty of estrogen, are tender breasts, tender enlarged breasts. So women who have these double V's or F's, or I've seen just, women are continuing to grow larger breasts, which just amazes me. It's a little scary. Because they're getting, the reason it's scary is because they're getting too much estrogen. And long term, that's going to increase their risk of breast cancer and other kinds of estrogen-sensitive cancers. It's just a reflection of an imbalance in their bodies, so that either they're making too much or they're exposed to too many environmental estrogens that are causing their breasts to get larger, and they don't have enough progesterone to block that. Okay? So, symptoms of PMS, and if I ramble a little bit, just bear with me today. So symptoms of PMS are going to be irritability, moodiness, intolerance, the feeling kind of, I'm going to curse just a little bit, to be feeling bitchy and witchy is a term that you'll hear. If a woman has too little progesterone, she'll walk around, why can't you do this right? And what'd you do, take dumb pills today? She will think so highly of herself when she is PMSing. And she'll think really well of herself and think really down of everybody else who's just not performing perfectly because she has so much estrogen on board and she is so incredibly smart. Do you know women like that? Have you been there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, that's too much estrogen relative to progesterone. All right. Progesterone has a calming effect so that the woman can still be a leader, can still do what she has to do, but is not going to beat up on other people in the process. All right? And the progesterone allows you, by raising your GABA, the progesterone allows you to ignore all of this stuff and be able to focus on what you need to focus on so that you don't get too scattered. Okay, so what happens to periods when you start having not enough progesterone? Progesterone, so if you, I don't have a picture for this, I need a picture for this. If this is day one of your cycle, so this is the first day that you bleed, okay? You're not making much estrogen, not making much progesterone, okay? And then you start making estrogen. And then when you ovulate, if you ovulate, your estrogen spikes up real high, and then it goes up like this, and for the next 2 weeks, and then kind of drops off, and you have day one of your cycle again. The cycle continues. You don't make any progesterone generally you have some, but not a lot, the first 2 weeks. So while you're having your period in that first week after your period, when your estrogen levels are modestly elevated, many women will feel the best that week right after their period. Then they'll ovulate, and what happens after you ovulate is progesterone and estrogen should be tracking each other. Actually, there's a whole lot more progesterone than there is estrogen, okay? But they're tracking each other, then they both drop off together and you have your cycle. Now, if you don't have enough progesterone relative to estrogen, then it's called being estrogen dominant. So you can describe chemically what's happening in the body during, when you're PMSing, is that you're estrogen dominant. You have too much estrogen. So that's why breasts get tender, fluid retention, irritability, moodiness. And those are the most common symptoms. Now, if you don't have enough progesterone to balance out that estrogen, what happens to your period? If you are making enough estrogen, but you make very, very little progesterone, you may skip a period. You may not have a period at all because you need that progesterone dropping off in order to have that period. If you make a little bit more progesterone, all right, then you may kind of drip into your period and then have the period and then kind of drip out of your period. Now, some women will find that when they ovulate on this side, it's different from ovulating on the opposite side. And so whenever they ovulate on one side, they'll have a period. But the next month, they'll ovulate on the opposite side and they won't have a period So the following month, that the period will be even heavier. So you start having irregularity in your periods that way, okay? And what you need is to be on cyclical progesterone during that period of time in order to go ahead and have regular periods. And some women say, oh, this is great, I'm not having as many periods. You are building up an estrogenic effect. You need the progesterone to protect you from that estrogen. And again, when progesterone balances out estrogen in your uterus, that reduces your risk of uterine cancer. When progesterone balances out estrogen in your breasts, that reduces your risk of breast cancer. It does not increase your risk of breast cancer. Progesterone, that's why I said progesterone is your friend. And I think that one of the real fallacies, and I did not put this in the article at all, is the idea that if you have estrogen sensitive and progesterone sensitive breast cancer, that you cannot take progesterone. And that's nuts, because progesterone receptors in breast cells, progesterone receptors in brain cells, progesterone receptors in your uterus, they initially turn on that cell's sensitivity to estrogen for a couple of weeks. So that's why if a woman like yourself goes on progesterone, you might get very sore breasts for the first month or two that you're cycling on progesterone if your estrogen levels are still sufficient. If they're low, you won't get that. But if you have normal estrogen levels and just not enough progesterone, you will get tender, swollen breasts, and it lasts for a month or two. And then progesterone turns off those cells. Progesterone goes out and it screens for cancer wannabe cells and takes them down. So progesterone reduces your risk of breast cancer, progesterone kills early breast cancer cells, and progesterone stops breast cancer cells from migrating, from metastasizing. So there's really no reason not to take natural progesterone. Now, you can't talk an oncologist into that, because it was estrogen progesterone positive. But progesterone turns off the cells over a period of about 6 weeks. So it's a wonderful hormone to have in your system when you're being treated for breast cancer, because it raises your GABA, it raises your calming neurotransmitters. Okay? Now, as women approach menopause, again, you get more and more estrogen dominant. Your progesterone starts going down in your late 30s. So that most women will start having either some PMS or some irregularity of their periods. If they haven't had it before, then they'll start having it in their late 30s. And then as you approach menopause, again, estrogen starts coming down, but progesterone has already come down even before estrogen. So the first hormone that I put women on as they are perimenopausal, and that may start in their late 30s, is natural progesterone. What if they don't get put on natural progesterone? What if they get put on birth control pills? So they're on birth control pills up until their doctor says, well, let's see if you're menopausal because you're 50 or 51. What happens to women who don't go on birth control pills, but they're still moderately estrogen dominant? What happens if you have too much estrogen in your system? You get fibroids in your uterus. You get ovarian cysts. You get fibrocystic breast disease, which increases your risk of cancer. Endometriosis is usually a problem with younger women, but it is still an imbalance in the hormones. It is too much estrogen. There's no question that estrogen feeds that, but you're right. Yeah. But usually there's infection, and there is also significant inflammation when women have endometriosis. So it's not just the hormones. It's partly that, but it's not just that. So as a woman is approaching menopause, she'll get uterine fibroids. Her periods will get heavier typically, and she'll get fibrocystic breast disease. And that excess estrogen without progesterone turning off that estrogenic effect is going to increase your risk of every single estrogenic cancer that we have. Now, the one that women worry about is breast cancer, right? But there are 9 different tissues along your GI tract, including your colon, that are sensitive to estrogen also. Uterine cancer, vulvar cancer, all of those. You're at increased risk of if you don't have enough progesterone. Because progesterone is your hormone that goes out and kills early cancer cells that are being stimulated by estrogen. So you want to go on progesterone as soon as you start having a decrease in the amount of progesterone in your system.
I want to right now.
The very best time, if you have regular periods, the very best time of the month to check a progesterone level is day 21. If your cycles are 28 days long, on about day 21 is when you want to check your progesterone level. And it should be somewhere between 12 and 25. It can be up to 30. It can even be up to 35. But it should not be 10.
It should be between
It
12
should
and
not.
35, the
Yeah.
progesterone.
Progesterone.
Uh-huh.
It should, it should not be 5. It should not be 3. It's got to be a nice, healthy progesterone level. And you have to look at, okay, what's the estrogen level? Because if the estrogen level is really high, then you want the person on the slightly higher range of the progesterone range. If the woman's estrogen level is already down some, she may function very well with her progesterone level being 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, so you have to look at both of those levels to figure out, okay, what's going to be the right dose for her, and does she need progesterone or not.